There was all topic about how you write more complete technical about how you did so what I'd like, I'm going to write a PR for Bundle and produce it. And rewrite that text and put a lot of those things. And it seemed like it might be good for me to spend 2 minutes, I don't know how to describe the working group. I'm going to do that. Go to your PR. You can look at the PR on the list and decide if you have some people. Does that sound like they would be very good?
Yeah.
We should use that. I'm going to rewrite the ice cream. Clearly, you can understand too. Yeah.
Bundle? Doesn't matter much.
Okay, so we have different $10.
Find a note. We got one.
All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. We have 12 after already. So this is Mmusic, IETF 97. Your chairs. We got the note well statement. Hopefully everybody's familiar with that one. Shouldn't be anything new there. Administrative stuff. As always, sign the blue sheets. They should be circulating right now. We have a JavaScribe, that's Jonathan. Note taker, we have Suhas, and we need one more note taker. It's pretty easy. It's a short meeting. Not a whole lot on there. No, don't look away. You know, we're not going to proceed before we get a second one. How about Brian? Would you be willing?
Yeah.
Thank you. It's not even safe in the back. When you speak, please make sure to use the microphone and state your name first. And also, if you're up here, you know, try to stay within the little box there. That works best with the camera. Document review request. We are trying to get a bunch of documents wrapped up. You know, some documents we have good reviews on, some we do not. So just a request again to everybody, you know, please try to sign up for document reviews. And I know it's sometimes easier to sign up for them than actually doing them. So you will hear from us, you know, when we don't get the reviews, and you know, please just try to make it a priority, because we can't really get through all these documents if we don't get some amount of review on them at least. Agenda. We have 2 items basically on the agenda right now: our usual status update, and then a couple of ICE-related issues. And I think, Cullen, you had a couple of comments on that.
Yeah, on the bundle draft, I'd just like to insert a couple minutes somewhere near the beginning of this meeting to try and talk about a proposal to move some text from JSUP into bundle to clarify some stuff. So a few minutes on that, if it's okay with people.
All right, sounds good. Anybody have any concerns with that? Yeah, that is a good question. Is Krister here? Okay, that could be a problem.
He knows what I'm going to say, so.
Okay, well, we're going to need him here anyway. We can run through the status stuff, and hopefully Krista will be here by then. But I assume he's okay with that agenda change as well. So we'll take that as a yes. Any other comments on the agenda? Martin?
Yeah, so just want to make sure that we close the deal on 4572. Like, put a nail in it, bury
Please.
it.
Yes.
That's everything.
So is everyone happy with the plan that we had? It's on the list? Okay, the plan is to, rather than try to monkey patch 4572 with an update, we will produce a new version of 4572 that contains exactly the changes that we agreed on in the list, but it's now a document that obsoletes 4572. It's just complete as opposed to a patchy thing. I think Colin's already done the work for that.
We have it on the status slides as well, so we can revisit there when we get to that. Any other comments on the agenda? All right. In terms of the working group status, we don't have any published RFCs yet. We have a couple of drafts still in the RFC editor's queue. 2326 BIS has now broken the 1,000-day milestone. So in Auth 48, 1,007 days to be exact at this point.
Yeah. So this is Magnus Westlund. I at least can say 2 out of the 5 authors have said it's okay to be published. So we're actually just waiting for the remaining 3 to sign off on the document.
All right. So there's hope. There's hope.
We've already passed 48 months and we're looking at 48 years.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess the second one, and I guess seen in that light, when you look at RTSP NAT, which stands at, I think, is 854 days, is not all that bad, actually, right? There you go.
This is Ben. Are those authors here? Any of them? Darn. Okay.
They responded before you did the massive update, right? They approved it, and then Magnus rewrote the document, and then so we're just waiting for them to approve it again.
Yeah, but I think we just got to ping them, and I don't know, do you need us to ping them actually, or you want to ping them themselves, or the RFC editor? The RFC editor is.
Can you ping them, please?
Huh?
Can you guys ping them,
Yeah,
please?
we'll do that.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. Note taker, if you can take an action for the chairs, please. All right, MSID and MUX exclusive, RFC editor queue, somewhat short of time, so that's a good thing. MUX attributes in IETF last call, and we don't have anything in IST review or publication requested right now. We thought we would have a couple actually, but that turned out not to be the case yet. We have 2 drafts that are waiting for write-ups right now. SCTP, SDP, I just reviewed that, finished this morning. Looks pretty good. A couple of editorial updates are needed, but we should be able to move forward with that one. SDP NAC, I think, is in pretty decent shape as well. So we'll expect that one to proceed pretty shortly as well. The RIT draft, is Adam here? Okay. We've tried getting a response from Adam as to this one is actually ready to move forward or not, and haven't heard back from him. So if anybody sees Adam, try to prod him as well. Working group last call, bundle. We just, can't seem to get this one finalized. Formally it is still in working group last call. Sorry, Colin, was there? No? Okay. Formally, we are still in working group last call. We are really hesitant to reissue a working group last call on this draft. So we just want to try to finish up with the comments that are there. I guess, Colin, you have a couple of additional comments in there, but really want to just try to, appeal to people, try to just focus on, let's get this document wrapped up, be a little bit flexible, and let's just, move ahead with this one. It's just been way too long at this point. And I think the author feels the same way too. So let's try to focus on this one. Ben.
Adam says in an IM just now said, yes, I need to make sure that's done. I'll get them an answer before lunch today.
All right, cool. Thank you. Simulcast, I think there were a couple of comments on that one as well.
Yeah, we have a few more edits that we need to make as a result of a few comments that we received. Otherwise, it should be good.
All right, so 4572 update, as Martin was just talking about before. So there was, we thought we were ready, then there were some changes, comments, etc. So there is a substantially updated version of the document, at least in terms of the text that's in there because of the overall approach. It will now obsolete the old 4572 update. Given that, we feel from the chair's point of view that we should reissue a working group last call more formally. So that's what we're planning on doing. Assuming we don't get any comments, then we can just move forward with that one again. Detailed SSDP, again, we thought we were ready to ask for publication, did a final review on that one, found a couple of issues, talked to the authors about that one. They have updated the document since then, just reviewed that again. There's a couple of fixes that have to be done in there, but given that there were some non-editorial changes done as a result of the review, we think that we probably need to do another working group last call, but just on the changes there again. It's not the entire document. I think the document is in pretty good shape, but again, want to make sure that people in the group are comfortable with what's in there. And then ISIP SDP and Trickle ISIP, those are both on the agenda today. So we'll get back to those. In terms of new work items, we don't have anything there. Other working group drafts not on the agenda right now or already covered elsewhere, or we have already covered. MSRP usage data channel, I think we're getting ready to move forward with that one now that we have the SDP neck draft well on its way. 4566 BIS, we have just not put any emphasis on this one because it's not holding up progress on anything else, and we have plenty of other documents to focus on that are dependencies, especially on the RTC website. So once we get more of that stuff finalized, we'll pick up the pace on 4566 BIS again. STP Directorate and Designated Expert reviews, we have a couple of those as well. Thank you to Dan Wing for reviewing a couple of those, and we had a couple of additional ones for the Designated Expert too. Last slide here is just basically a recap. Jonathan, was there a question?
So
comment?
somewhat to the previous slide, somewhat to this slide. I believe when I was talking to Cullen earlier, 4566 BIS is currently actually a WebRTC dependency. Something references it.
4566 BIS?
Yes. I mean, maybe it shouldn't. Maybe there's something that should be referencing 4566 itself. But currently, I think Cullen's tree walking algorithm does find 4566 BIS.
Okay, because I thought we had covered that previously, and we had agreed that that was not the case.
Maybe it's a mistake in some document. That's right.
Okay, so just to make sure I understand, we think that probably WebRTC shouldn't depend on 4566 BIS. It should just be on 4566. Is that sort of like our best guess?
That is the chair's assumption right now. Now, is there anything in 4566 BIS that is not in 4566 that you need, and hence we got to move this forward, or was it just that you were trying to stay current with the references?
I imagine it's an accidental staying current with the references that we can go back and look at, unless Trickle ICE in some way needs it. That's the only one I can think of that would be.
Okay, so Colin, can we ask you to take an action to verify that?
I'll try and figure out where that is by the end of the meeting.
Yeah, whether you guys in fact do have a dependency on it or not, because if you do,
Okay.
then we obviously need to put more emphasis on it. Right now, we're assuming
Yes.
you don't.
Yeah.
All right, so for the note taker, you got that? Thank you.
Just on that topic, Christian Groves, there might be something in the SDP negotiation for WebRTC data channels, because there's that new level. We're introducing a new level for the SDP attributes, so there might be something with the INO registration stuff. So there might be some dependency there.
Okay.
Christian had exactly right. It is that document that refers to 4566 BIS. That is our normative dependency pin, is through that data channel document.
Okay.
So I think we'd have to look at that document and figure out if there was a problem.
Okay. But Colin, you will still get back to us with more details around exactly what it is that you need, so we can understand whether we need to push this one ahead or not. Okay, Krista?
Yes, Chris, there's of course a lot of documents where we reference, bundle and everything, which does something with SDP, but I don't remember if we reference BIS, so maybe we don't, so maybe it's not an issue. But my point is that in RTC Web, if they reference one document which reference 4566 BIS, then you're going to have an implicit reference anyway. And then if you have somewhere 4566 and another place 4566 BIS, maybe it doesn't matter, because I guess there are no major changes in those or major deviations.
When we looked at the documents, if we go to the next slide, when we looked at the documents previously, at least in the last meeting that we have on this list, which were identified as RTC web dependencies at the time, we did not see 4566 bis ending up being a dependency as a result of these documents. Now, we have not gone through all the RTC web documents to verify that that is indeed also the case over there. But, understood. So, but at least here we haven't seen that, and no, I have not heard of anybody else either. But I agree. I mean, yeah, we've got to trace through that, of course. Really? Normatively? Mux attributes.
Yeah, I think the Mux draft refers to 4566 bis because of the IANA update that we did to see how do we, for the new attributes, what the procedure we need to follow. And 4566 bis explains how to deal with the new attribute or updating the existing category. So, that's
Okay.
Yeah. Ted Hardy speaking, with my co-chair behind me going, Ted comes up to suggest a downref exception. And he's exactly right. Given that the change here is actually just an IANA procedures, I think a downref is eminently sensible and would help us avoid pain and suffering. Since I'm not in favor of pain and suffering, let's do that.
Yeah, that sounds very appealing to me. Any 80 comments, objections, disagreements?
I do not disagree.
All right, thank you. Uh-oh.
That document has already been approved. So, yeah, so you're going to add a downref now?
Ted Hardy, I'm not the downref king, but I'm a troll in the bottom of the downref's dungeon. It is entirely possible to send a message to the IETF mailing list, rerunning the last call for the sole purpose of the downref. But that's all you open, right? You say, we're not taking comments on anything else but this downref. All other matters are closed. It works pretty well.
I think the answer right now is the ADs need to look at this and confer with the chairs and see what to do.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just going to say that the procedural trolls will work in the salt mines and bring back an answer to the working group.
All right. So for the note taker, you got that captured as well? That the chairs will confer further with the ADs on how to proceed, whether we can replace the Mux attributes reference to 4566 bis with 4566. All right. Krister?
Yes, I think the 4572 update should now be based on the change we did with the discussions with Colin and Thomas and everything. That's now going to be a direct reference, I assume.
Sorry,
and I think also DTLS STP, but I don't know, but at least 4572 update.
Oh, because it's listed as a indirect, you're saying that should be a direct. Yes, agreed. All right. Any other comments on the RTC web dependencies and Mmusic? Colin.
This may not matter once we get rid of 4566, but it has a weird reference to a char set draft from long ago, and it seemed that one could be converted to the actual RFC. I was going to send an email to Ali to see if we could get this fixed, but there's another weird dependency problem since we're discussing all of this. Basically, there's a char set document. The draft updated hasn't been updated in like a year now, I think. And when we actually looked at the draft in 4566 biz, it looked like it could easily just reference the original RFC. It didn't need to reference the new draft. But right now it has a normative reference to that draft.
Okay. Could you send a mail on that just so we don't forget
Yeah,
about
can we
it?
capture that in the actions too, or whatever? The IANA char set reference in 4566 biz.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Colin. Any other comments? All right, I think that is it for the status updates. So Colin, you wanted to talk about bundle real quick?
So one of the most recent, so we just sent the JSUP draft to working group last call, and it had one new big block of text about how you take RTP packets and figure out what happens to them next, like how they eventually end up at the right codec. And this involves how you look at the MIDs, the RIDs, the SSRCs, and that type of information, and figure out what happens. Now, the text we have there has some problems with it and a few ideas to do it. Now, what I want to propose doing, and I had a good conversation, I've had a bunch of conversations with different people about it, particularly Magnus and Colin and Jonathan this morning, and I think I can put together a proposal of 2 pull requests to fix this up in a way that I hope everyone's okay with, and I wanted to give people a heads up on that here. So it would take the bulk of that text that's in section 6 of the JSUP draft right now, and it would move it over to the bundle draft. The algorithms that the resulting algorithm that you would write if you were implementing a browser would not change very much. A couple little fine print on that coming back in a second, but just for working purposes, it doesn't change for a second. We'd rewrite the terminology a little bit to term this more in terms of an RTP stream, explain how you look at the SSRC, and from the SSRC number in the RTP packet, that is which stream it's in, and then we'd write some of the other text to be in that terminology. That would line it up more consistent with the RTP documents. The one change that would be actually made to the algorithm would be to make it so right now we have a line that if you have payload, if the only information, just to summarize the algorithm, in some cases it can use payload type to determine which IM section that this would go to. And it only does that in the cases where you don't have RIDs or MIDs or SSRC signalings or some better way of doing it. And one of the things that we had in that is that if there was multiple that it could go to, if the same payload type occurred on multiple IM sections, the current draft says it goes to the first one. And Magnus pointed out that that's nuts, that this should never happen. Like, you could only be able to use this hint if they were all unique. So it would be better in the case that they were, if the payload types are not unique, the same payload type occurs on multiple IM sections, and you have no other way to figure out which one of these IM sections it goes to, it discards the packet. So that's the only technical change to the algorithm. So I expect to do a pull request to bundle, pull requests to JSUP. There'll still be a bunch of text in JSUP that talks about how this maps up to the names of the objects that we use over there, right? Like, I'm not going to be in the bundle draft, we're not going to be talking about RTP, senders and receivers and transceivers. We're going to be talking about IM sections, and then the JSUP draft will say how IM section lines up with the names we use there. But the bulk of the algorithm actually moves over to the bundle draft is what I'm proposing. So I put together pull requests. I will put together pull requests for bundle and for JSUP at the same time, put them on both the lists, and then people will need to review them. I would like to move relatively quickly on this. People have thoughts or comments with that plan. I understand people have to see the actual text to agree to it, but would that plan sound like a reasonable approach to people? I mean, the whole algorithm moving to the bundle to start with, really.
Adam wrote, yeah, that sounds good to me.
Okay. Good. That's it. Thank you.
All right. Krister, you're up.
Which one do you want to start with? This? Doesn't look sure.
Okay. No. Okay. This is for a few issues for the ICP SCP draft. I'm not the main editor of this draft. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to go through these slides with the main author, but these issues that I'm going to raise here have been raised also on the list. There's been some comments on it. Actually, most of them came to my mind when I was talking with the BFCP people about helping them to try to finalize their text. But it's not really BFCP specific. It's SDP offer answer specific. So let's take a look at those. So next slide, please. And this is just to make this is ICE SDP specific. That's why we talk about it here and not in the ICE working group. Okay, so first is the default candidate in SDP answer. First, a couple of background. According to offer answer, even though, as I said, it's not actually specified, but I think it's what most people assume, is the M line in the offer and answer must match. So, the transport in the M line in the offer and answer must match. So if you put transport X in the offer in this M line, in the corresponding M line in the answer, you need to have protocol X also. What the draft ICEP SDP says is that the C and M line, or I guess in the both offer and answer must contain the same default candidate. The reason why it's required in offer is because we don't know whether ICE is going to be used in the first place. So you need to put something in the C and M line that works even if the answer doesn't support or want to use ICE. The problem is that you also have the same requirement for the answer, and there is really no justification for it. And the problem that can occur, if you go to the next slide, please, is what its offer and answer have different. The offerer has one default candidate and the answer has another one, and they use different transport. Now we say that you must put the default in the C and M line, but if the answer has a different transport, it can't put it in the C and M line because of the 3264 rules. So the only thing it can do is basically reject the whole M line, which is kind of stupid because, I mean, it wants to do ICE, and there are candidates with transport that it does support, so it is able to establish a session. So this is just a 3264 restriction issue. So basically, my suggestion is here that we basically remove the requirement to insert the default candidate in the CVM line of the SDP answer. The answer knows, okay, we're going to use ICE, so it puts whatever there that matches the M line in the offer, and we're done. And then he puts the candidates, because the candidates are going to be used then to actually establish the transport. So the C and M line doesn't really matter, but it has to be there because of 3264. So that's my suggestion.
I'm Ecker, and I approve this message.
Alan Ford, I mean, I mentioned this on the list as well, and yes, I definitely support making this change. It would be a good thing. We just echo what's in the offer and ignore it.
Jonathan Lennox, I mean, the one issue here is the other thing this does is it's also for detecting ICE mismatch. Okay, so you've got an SBC that's mucking with your C and M lines and doesn't understand ICE. That's for detecting this. I'm worried that'll break that mechanism. I don't know. It was, I assume it was put in ICE for a reason. Yeah, no, but I mean, I think that, you know, I mean, yes, SBCs shouldn't be passing A equals lines they don't understand, but they do. So, you know, I think that's why, you know, the ICE mismatch stuff was in here. And I'm afraid it'll break that. Now, mind you, I think that the candidate you list here, I mean, so the worry you have, I guess, especially for the BFCP case, is that the answer doesn't have any candidate that matches this transport, right? Because I mean, in a lot of that, if you know you're doing ICE, what candidate you use doesn't matter. But as long as there's some candidate that matches the transport, that's okay. But I guess the worry you have is, you know, I offer UDP and TCP BFCP, defaulting to TCP, that only does UDP BFCP.
Actually,
yeah.
The case where the other endpoint doesn't support the protocol to begin with, that's my next issue. So we'll come back to this one.
Right.
This is basically regarding the mandate to put the default candidate in the M line on the answer.
Yeah, like I said, it's the ICE mismatch is the case that you care about there, if you care about that. And I'm not sure we do, but maybe we do.
And based, actually, maybe I should have taken the other issue first, because depending on how we move forward with the next issue, maybe this issue will actually go away. So I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. So the issue is, it's actually not the default candidate which is in the answer. It's the selected candidate. It's the selected candidate, which goes into the answer. So slight correction in terminology. I think the original explanation why this thing was needed is if there are anything on the line which monitors the signal exchange and doesn't understand ICE, it needs to know which transport, which IP import being used for communication. So it can get this information from a C&M line, and if we remove this requirement, they no longer will need this. And so that's why the requirement is there. And basically what happens is if we, as I said, if we're switching from UDP to TCP, then we have different transport protocols in the M line, which causes the mismatch, which breaks the 3264 rules. So that's the issue. And again, I know that requirement that the C&M line is supposed to match what's actually being used for communications for some external monitoring tools, been raised multiple times on the list, but I'm not sure if it's actually affecting anybody.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see evidence that anybody is doing anything useful with this, any of this information. I mean, the bottom line is that the instructions in 5245 tell you to put in like the like least either what is actually the least likely set of parameters, namely the relay parameters, and so like these mismatches are constant, and so like I strongly suspect putting chicken will work in here. And if not putting chicken, then I'm like fairly confident that putting like exactly the shit you offer put in here will work. And like I think it's really incumbent on anybody who thinks that like this stuff is doing anything useful to like produce some evidence that's the case.
And I think I mean, in most cases, I don't think this is even going to be an issue, because, for example, RTP, I assume that people are going to put the transport in the M line. I think it's going to be very rare that you put, for example, TCP in the transport. The same thing goes for the data channel. Actually, in the draft STP DTLS, we say now that you should use UDP and TCP should just be the last, the worst case. But this again came up with BFCP, because as far as I understand, in BFCP, UDP and TCP has equal weight, so to say. There is no one which is more, than the other. So I think that's where this issue could come up. And as far as I know, in BFCP, endpoints don't have to support both TCP and UDP. They could support just one of them. But then we come to more to the issue in my next issue. So if you don't support the protocol to begin with, or the transport.
Adam Roach, going back to what Jonathan was saying, I think that he gave an answer to the problem, but then kind of breezed past it. I think if you just say we're changing mismatch detection for answers so that if it doesn't match any of the candidates, it's a mismatch, as opposed to if it doesn't match the default candidate, is a mismatch, and then everything works. I think that makes Jonathan's problem go away. No?
Oh, the C&M line is what defines what the default candidate is. Mismatch is when the C&M line don't match any candidate, and that means you've got a B2B UA in between that's mucking with your SDP, but leaving A equals candidate in without understanding it.
Well, I misunderstood your issue then.
Well, I mean, I think the C&M line should obviously match some candidate. I mean, otherwise.
Yeah, exactly.
So we can, of course, we can add text saying that there. I mean,
Yeah.
we can say that the C&M line must match a candidate. We cannot say.
I think that's what it says.
Yeah.
I mean, the problem, like you said, is the BFCP case where you can't, is the C&M line. I mean, if you say the C&M line must match some candidate and must use the same transport as in the offer, the problem you run into is the BFCP case.
Yeah, so maybe we should go to the next issue. We can come back here because I think I described that's the next issue where you don't support the transport to begin with. So do you want to comment on this, or you want to make? Okay, so next slide, please. Okay, so basically
Kristen, so for the note taker, it sounds like there's no clear conclusion on this one. Yes.
Let's take this first, maybe.
All right. Okay.
We got time. Okay, so basically the background is for the same thing here. The transport in the answer has to match the offer. So next slide, please. So this is basically what if the answer does not support the transport in the M line of the offer to begin with. And I guess here we're mostly talking about the BFCP. The BFCP contains an offer. In the CM line, you have, for example, UDP, and then you have a candidate for TCP. So the offer does support both UDP and TCP, but in the M line, it puts the UDP and then it has a TCP candidate. Now let's say that the answerer, he only supports TCP. And basically, yeah, that's fine. The offer sent me a TCP candidate so we can, you know, establish. But again, you have this rule that the answer, the M line in the answer must have the same transport. So basically, the answer has to put UDP in the CM line of the answer, even if it doesn't support UDP to begin with. So can I just, you know, so next slide, please. So basically, I have two alternatives how we can solve this. First, we could define that every protocol supporting ICE must define a mandatory to support transport. Again, for RTP, I think this is de facto. If you do RTP, you support UDP. You may support TCP. If you do the data channel, you support UDP. But again, with BFCP, you cannot assume that all endpoints are going to support both UDP and TCP. So basically, that's it. We define a mass support transport. But the alternatives too is basically we allow the answer to put whatever in the CM line. And because again, it knows that ICE is going to be used, so you're actually going to use the candidates then to actually establish the connection. So I know this is a little hacky. You put something in the CM. I mean, this is the thing, you know, we shouldn't use the CM line to begin with when we use ICE, but you know, this is what we have. So yeah.
John, thanks. I mean, the third possibility is, as you said, there's, you know, you're just inferring that the transports have to match in the offer and the answer.
I mean, if
will anything break if we want to say that if you're using ICE, they don't. You know, they have to semantically match, but you know, they don't have to textually match because the default candidates might be different.
Yeah, as I said, there is nothing in 3264, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that says that the transport in the offer answer has to match. I was looking, and but there is no text about that. So
great. Let's say it doesn't have to match.
Well, sure, if the community can agree on that, but I think that's something we need to agree on, because a lot of people I talk to are assuming, yeah, that the transport has to match in the offer answer. Not only the transport, but the whole proto value. So if we want to, you know, maybe we should update 3264 then to clarify that. But that's a separate issue. But if we make that assumption, we should at least get it into the notes, I think, of this meeting. So.
Okay. Charles Eckel. So I agree with you. I kind of have that assumption that what you put in the M line, the transport needed to match. I think a lot of people kind of have that built in. So I think it's safer to remain with that. But relaxing the rule checking that you do as to, like, when ICE is in effect, I think is okay. And I thought that was the way it was. That's the way ICE is written, right? And then if you happen to, like, if you say UDP in your M line, but the ICE candidate you end up using is TCP, I thought you had to send a re-invite.
Yeah, but
that's
isn't
that the way it works?
I don't think today you don't have to send a re-invite, but I mean that's after the offer answer, first offer answer transaction is done.
Right.
That's when you basically update to.
Right. And that was for middle boxes, I thought.
Yes. I think the issue, but by relaxing this, because let's say that I offer you UDP, I put that in a transport, and then you send me back, for example, TCP. In the M line of your transport. Let's say we don't do ICE, you know, how do you know that I support TCP? You do know I support UDP because that's what I had in the M line of the offer, but now you send TCP back because so you don't know if I support that.
No, so what you put in the M line, you keep, if you said UDP in the M line answer, you keep it as UDP, but you let the ICE negotiation still happen.
Yeah. So you mean, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So that
that's
means
what
that
we
I put UDP in the M line on the answer, even though I may not support it to begin
Right.
with, because I do support the TCP that you had in your, in the candidate.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Alan Ford, and yeah, just to echo that, number 2 seems the way to go here. Clarification here would be useful, and yeah, everything will be better.
Yeah, like a, discard port, known invalid address, and, priority 0 candidate.
Well, that brings another question. If you put now TCP in the M line, do you have to put a dummy candidate also pointed to TCP? I don't think. Yeah, but I don't think. Why should we do that? I mean, it's
Because at least in the 5245 rules, if it doesn't match, you're not. It's a mismatch, and you're not doing ICE. The CNM line has to match one candidate.
okay. But maybe we should then remove that restriction too, at least in the answer. I do get it in the offer, but
Yeah,
I mean, again, we have to remember that for most uses, this is not going to be an issue. I mean,
I know, I agree, but,
for RTP, this is at this moment, I can only think of BFCP where this may become an issue. So. Because
Yes, hi. First of all, we're still having an issue where we have a backwards compatibility, where, for instance, when you're sending the default, when the remote party does not support ICE, and we send an offer with TCP and it only supports UDP, that means it will fail, even though we technically support TCP. So that's issue number 1, which we're still dealing with. Issue number, the other proposal which I had, I'm not sure if it might be a little bit radical, is to also add the ICE transport tag. So when we basically don't want to deal with selecting UDP or TCP, just put ICE, DTLS, SRTP, and in the offer, and put the same in the answer, and put a bogus IP address in there, and don't deal with default candidate at all. Because
if you put the so-called ICE transport in the M line of the offer, then you don't have backward compatibility if the answer doesn't support ICE. And the first thing you said, if the endpoints don't support the same transport to begin with, I mean, obviously then it's going to fail. There's nothing we can do that, no matter if they do ICE or not. I mean, if they don't, if I only support UDP and you only support TCP, we will not be able to establish a session. I mean, I'm not trying to fix that because there is no fix for that.
No, but I'm just what I was saying is when the offer supports both, let's say UDP and TCP, it makes a decision of putting UDP in the offer. And the answer only supports TCP, it doesn't support ICE. That setup fails. But it's kind of a use case 1. Use case 2 is where you don't need any, where you actually don't only want to support ICE. And that's what we do with WebRTC, where we technically are putting a bogus IP address in the default candidate. So this whole dance which we have with the default candidate is kind of pointless. So if we can just indicate it clearly that there is no default candidate there and we have a different transport, we kind of bypass that problem for cases when non-ICE use case is not supported to begin with. So those are 2 independent, like the first one is an issue and the second one is a proposal for cases when ICE is required.
I agree, and in WebRTC and other usages, so this is fine to mandate, but I don't think in our documents we want to. In this generic ICE STP, I don't think we want to assume that the other endpoint supports ICE. I mean, we want to have this backward compatibility case.
But then essentially what you probably want to do is, if your endpoint supports both UDP and TCP, you want to put 2 M lines, one which would be TCP, another which would be UDP, and have some way of basically the answer picking one. That's the backwards compatibility case that you're trying to achieve, because the backwards compatibility
that's called STP CapNeg. I mean, it's
I understand, but we're still kind of trying to solve the problem which doesn't necessarily solves itself quite cleanly right now, because even if the issue that you raise is basically we're generating an offer, we need to pick the protocol, but we don't know which one the answer will support, and it doesn't work for and we kind of half solve it when the answer just happens to support ICE.
Krister, just a time check. You got 15 minutes left total, so you decide how you want to spend that time.
I don't know. I'd like to at least, because I had the other presentation and instead that or someone said that I should, so I'd like to. But anyway, so.
Well, I'll just make a very quick answer to Roman's point in that problem exists today. You have to make a guess at the start. That's just the way it's done. Yeah, maybe you should have done 2 M lines, but that's not the way it's done. So we're trying to resolve it. Yeah. So.
I mean, we discussed this multiple M lines in the past many years ago for all different kind of reasons. If you, for example, if you want to offer both AVP and SAVP and all this kind of stuff, and obviously you have bundle, but that's not really fit because you're not really doing multiplexing here. You're giving different alternatives, and the mechanism we defined for that was Kapnick. So you know. Yeah. But anyway, so okay. Can we move on? I'd just like to go through everything. So. Oh.
I was just trying to get this to the resolution.
Oh, okay.
It's not bad. Okay. Can we agree that this is all about an answerer's behavior? Okay. We have 2 ICE endpoints. We know what the offer will do. Now we're wondering how to answer. Okay. And we have basically 2 possibilities. A, answer with a default candidate that doesn't exist. Or B, use a candidate that is in the list, but relax the matching constraints. I think that those are the 2 choices, and we can not vote, but maybe hum.
Charles Eccles. I think we have a lot of examples from the past where the answer can be do something that maybe isn't entirely correct by the standard when it has enough information from the offer and what it knows of its own capabilities to do the right thing. And the way we've always defined it is put the right thing in the offer for the M line so that for backward compatibility, something that doesn't know this new thing, whether it be ICE or feedback parameters for RTCP, or if it's using security, that securing the RTP, the right thing happens. So, for example, putting AVP, but letting someone answer with leaving the M line as AVP, even though they put feedback parameters in there, or sending AVP and using security, you should have put SAVP, but you didn't because the call might fail. We've done that a lot in the past. It's always worked out okay. It's too bad that we had to do it, but it seemed better than Kapnick, and I think this is just one more example. Take that same approach. Do the thing in the offer that's going to work for backward compatibility. If the answer doesn't support the new thing, doesn't support ICE, then if they do, they let ICE do its thing and just echo back the M line what you got in the offer. So, and if we have to send a reinvite, great, we do that. That way the middle boxes are happy. We've done that a lot. It always works.
Roman?
Colin Chase. Let me just plus.
Colin, hang on.
Sorry.
Roman, go ahead.
Again, just I think the better solution is just to have a must implement transport for all the protocols. Right now, the only thing which is kind of out of that is BFCP, and that solves all the problems with legacy. It solves all the problems with current stuff. So it might be easier to do it that way.
And you would have to say that you must use that as default candidate also, because
yes, and you must you would say that you must use it as a default candidate in offering the answer. And once you pick something different for ICE, you do another reinvite and move to the next one. And that works.
That would work fine as long as no one had shipped BFCP yet. But given people have shipped it for over 10 years, changing it in any way whatsoever is impossible for this case. So that's the bad news. This is the really good news. For everything that does ICE, it absolutely doesn't matter what you put in this field, right? Because it ignores it. So, right. Well, and so for what we should do to that, so what we should put in here is the thing that will cause the least surprises for stuff that doesn't understand it. Which is just, it's exactly what Charles said. It's just like copy the data back in there. And I don't know, like we've discussed this probably every 6 months for the past 4 years and always reached the same conclusion. Let's kill it. I mean, which of these two, you nicely put what the choices were. Which of the two choices we choose doesn't make any difference to someone who does ICE. So we're only talking about what happens to things that are on the signaling path and don't understand ICE. And the thing that will cause them least surprise is echoing the value in. It's the conclusion we reach every time we discuss this.
So basically what you're saying here is alternative 2. We can't make alternative 1 because, it's too late for BFCP at least. Alternative 2 is basically put whatever in the M line of the answer.
Yep. Yeah. Put in if you're doing ICE, in the blank irrelevant field which no one reads, copy in the data that came from the other direction. That's all I'm proposing.
All right. So in the interest of trying to close something here, can we get a hum of people in favor of 2 and people opposed to 2? So if you are in favor of option 2, hum now. If you are opposed to option 2, hum now. All right, for the note taker, option 2, please. So, Krista, you got 9 minutes. What do you want to do?
Yeah, just to the previous one, I assume this also means that we're going to remove the requirement to put the default candidate in the M line of the answer because, we just now said that. Yeah, just put something there. I'd just like to get that into the notes. That was my suggestion of the previous, if you go a couple of slides back. No, one more. Yeah. There's a spelling error there. It should be removed, but basically we're not going to say that you have to put the default candidate in the M line of the answer.
All right, so again, just asking real quick, anybody opposed to the proposed solution here?
John Myers, I think that implementation is doing a strict 5245 implementation will have a problem with that. So I would propose instead add you have to put something there and it has to match a candidate. So in these weird transport mismatch cases, which is the only case that matters, make it, put a, priority 0 invalid IP address dummy candidate as, to the list, just to keep things like that happening.
Keep in mind that we have this ICE2 option, this ICE option, which is going to be in the offer. So if you think there's something which doesn't work backward, we can always make that, this is something you can do if,
okay,
the offer supports this and that. So.
Colin Jensen, I could easily live with that, but didn't we always previously put whatever you thought you were using was what you put in here?
But I thought we just said in the earlier slide we hummed for alternative 2, which basically
That's a different field.
No.
This is about the port, right?
No, both issues are about the transport in the M line.
Right. Transport and transport. Okay. Yep. Just copy across.
Okay. So
could you restate the conclusion, because I'm not sure I understood how Jonathan modified it.
So my suggestion to avoid ICE mismatch. So my suggestion was that, you have to pick a candidate that doesn't, either it doesn't matter which, or Collins, the one you think you'll be using. If you're in this case where you have the transport mismatch, include a dummy, 0 priority dummy candidate of the correct transport, with lower priority than any of your other ones, I think.
So you're basically okay with this, but you want to put this dummy candidate.
Yeah, to put the dummy candidate in just to satisfy ICE mismatch issues. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just seems like we're jumping through enormous amounts of hoops to fix something which is yet to be established to be a problem. Like if you're an ice mismatch, the connection will fail, and you will notice that. And so early alert, early warning on that does not seem like a particularly important function. It's yet to be established that anybody actually does that. Again, I think it's really incumbent on you to like demonstrate that this is like something actually is worth making any accommodation for whatsoever.
All right. So I think we still don't have a clear conclusion on this one. And if you want to spend, you can either spend your last 5 minutes trying to get to a conclusion.
No, I'd
or you
like to
wanna-
move on to the next one. I think
let's
we have, I think we more or less agree. I think Jonathan's issue is to make sure that maybe we need something for backward compatibility. But again, we can use maybe we can say, if this ICE2 option is not there, you have to put this dummy candidate. Otherwise, we can remove that requirement also. But I think we have a move path forward. I don't have text here, so we need to do pull requests and so on and see that. So
yeah, let's get some text and discuss that on the list. And Ecker, I hope that satisfies your concern as well.
okay, so move on because I think the last thing is important because it so 3 slides forward.
Okay.
One more. Yeah, this is a text that we put together with Roman when we were writing the SDP draft, but then we realized that this is generic ICE SDP, so it should be put into that document. So basically, some background again, you have 2 endpoints that negotiate this media session. They may have UDP, TCP-based candidates. And, before nomination, based on removal of aggression and all that, so before the nomination, that the media can be sent on any valid pair. And you can switch between candidate pairs before you have done the nomination. If you trickle, it may take a long time before you do a nomination and so on. And as you switch between candidates, obviously the transport may switch because if you have both TCP and UDP candidates. So next slide, please. Okay, now did you go backward or is this? Yeah, go. Yeah, one more. Okay, so no. One more. Okay, so this is basic clarification here. A couple of I don't want to change what I just had there. This is just a clarification text. So first, we think that it's good to clarify that when the endpoint switches transport, you don't need to send an offer to reflect that. Because that means during nomination or before nomination, if you switch between UDP and candidates, you would have to send a lot of updates before the call hasn't even been, accepted. So we want I don't think anyone would do that, but I think we need to clarify that to make sure that you don't need to send a new offer. The M line is what it is, and while you switch, you can switch to other transport. But then, when an offer is sent for another reason, and this could of course be, for example, once you've done the ICE nomination, but maybe you're sending an offer for a non-ICE related issue. Then that the M line should always match the currently used transport, the nominated transport, I guess you should call it. So if you sent the initial offer, for example, using UDP, but then you're gonna end up using a TCP candidate. So next time you send an offer, you should actually have TCP in the M line.
John, thanks. I think your question isn't possible because by definition, once something's nominated, you know what candidate pair it uses, which is using a certain transport, right? So I think your question could only happen if you're sending an update before nomination.
Yeah, but is it mandatory to send the update once nomination is done?
No.
And then,
Well, I mean, I don't know.
And then now we're coming back to the, I know
That's-
you
that's
have
a separate
issues with this, but there's been talking about this never doing the nomination. I guess that discussion doesn't
Yeah,
belong
no, I mean,
here.
I think
So
I think my point is your bullet point question under 2 there only applies before nomination. After nomination, by definition, they're using the same transport because nomination has.
Sure, but I think it would be good to say that after nomination, the M line always have to match the nominated.
Yeah.
So it's not
Yeah,
like
definitely.
so maybe because I just want to avoid a case that someone sent UDP in the initial offer and maybe they nominated TCP but
Yeah, that's fine. That's
then
fine.
it keeps the UDP and
No,
M
no,
line.
I mean,
And we should avoid that. So this is just
no,
clarifying.
the thing you send should match after nomination. The thing you send should match.
Okay, good.
So no more comments, sorry. We are actually over time already. Is there a way of quickly reaching a conclusion on this one, or? Yes, somebody objects? No, sorry. All right, we are out of time, unfortunately, so we will have to continue on the list. And I guess we need to ask for more time next time.
Maybe one final administrative thing. I signed up to do a view of this. I did it. It's taking me a long time to type it up because it's generated a lot of comments, but I hope to have something on the mailing list by the end of this week or maybe sometime next week.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have the blue sheets?
I know ISG and stuff, but no.